Ever feel like you're working harder than ever but still falling behind? Like no matter how much you cut back, save, or hustle, there's never enough left over? You're not imagining it, and you're definitely not alone. Let's be real for a second. When we talk about Australia's biggest problems, what usually comes up? The insane cost of housing, sky-high interest rates, climate change, maybe even healthcare. But there's something else quietly eating away at everyday Aussies, something most people aren't talking about enough: debt. And no, I'm not just talking about the national debt or what the government owes to foreign lenders. I'm talking about personal debt, the kind that creeps in slowly. Through credit cards, buy now, pay later apps, car loans, student debt, and mortgages you probably shouldn't have qualified for in the first place. The kind of debt that follows you home, that keeps you up at night, that sits in the background of every financial decision you make, like an invisible weight. It's the quiet kind, the kind that doesn't scream until it's already wrecking your mental health, your relationships, and your future. How did we get here? Australia used to be known for its lifestyle, the beaches, the Barbies, the laid-back vibe. But somewhere along the line, things changed. The economy grew, the cost of living crept up, and suddenly, people had to start borrowing just to keep up, not to get ahead, just to stay afloat. Think about it. Back in the day, you could buy a house on one income, raise a family, have the occasional holiday, maybe even save a bit. Now, two full-time incomes barely cut it, and even then, it's a struggle. Why? Because debt has become normalized. Credit cards, mortgages the size of small countries, it's all become part of everyday life. But just because it's common doesn't mean it's okay. As of 2025, the average Australian household debt is over $250,000. That's more than double the average annual income. Most of this debt is tied up in housing, but a growing chunk is from personal loans, credit cards, and buy now, pay later schemes. We also have one of the highest household debt-to-income ratios in the world, hovering around 190%. That means for every dollar we earn, we owe nearly two. That's not normal, that's not sustainable, and it's not healthy. It's not just the mortgage. More and more Australians are relying on debt just to get by. Not to live large, not to splurge, just to survive, to buy groceries, to keep the lights on, to pay the rent. We're seeing people turn to credit cards not because of emergencies, but because the money simply doesn't stretch far enough anymore. Essentials, basic things like food, fuel, school supplies, are ending up on credit statements. And that debt doesn't go away, it grows. Then there's buy now, pay later. Afterpay, Zip, Klarna, they were marketed as smart, flexible ways to shop. Break up your payments, no interest, no worries. But in reality, for a lot of people, they've turned into a financial trap. When you're juggling 5 or 6 different payment plans at once, even small purchases stack up. Miss a payment, and the fees kick in, fast. Credit cards are still a big problem too. The average Aussie credit card debt sits around $3,000, but with interest added in, you could end up paying nearly double what you actually spent. And if that's not enough, there's the fallback: personal loans, car loans, payday loans. For some, when things get really desperate, they end up turning to unregulated lenders or loan sharks. That's when things spiral. This is the new normal, and it's terrifying. Cost of living pressure. Everything's getting more expensive: food, fuel, insurance, education, rent. The basic cost of living in Australia has shot up, and for most people, wages haven't kept pace. Not even close. So what do people do? They borrow, they cut corners, they hustle, they fall behind. Let's talk about rent. In major cities like Sydney, Melbourne, and even places like Brisbane and Perth, prices have jumped by 20 to 30% in just the last 2 years. That's not a small increase. For a lot of renters, that means paying an extra $100 to $300 a week, and that's money that has to come from somewhere. But with no meaningful rise in take-home pay, people are being forced to make impossible choices. Do you pay rent? Or do you eat well this week? Do you fill up the car or cover the electricity bill? Even food is pushing people to the edge. Grocery prices have spiked. That same basket of staples you bought last year? It now costs 10–15% more, sometimes even higher depending on where you live. Fresh produce, meat, dairy, it's all edging out of reach for many Aussie families, so people downsize their meals, skip certain items, or turn to buy now, pay later just to put food on the table. This is the cost of living now, and it's crushing people, slowly and quietly. Debt and mental health. Here's where it gets even more serious. Debt isn't just a money problem. It's a mental health problem. We don't talk about this enough, but the emotional weight of debt can be crushing. People dealing with ongoing debt are far more likely to experience anxiety, depression, panic attacks, insomnia, and even suicidal thoughts. And honestly, it's not hard to understand why. When you're constantly worried about due dates, repayments, mounting interest, and penalties, it's like your brain never gets a break. There's always something hanging over your head. You can't relax. You can't plan ahead. You can't even breathe properly. Debt eats away at your peace of mind. It isolates people. It makes you withdraw from friends, from family, from life. It brings shame, even when that shame isn't deserved, even when it's not your fault. Because let's face it, the system's broken. Wages are stagnant, prices are rising. The math doesn't add up anymore, yet people still blame themselves for not keeping up. And because there's still so much stigma around debt, most people don't talk about it. They suffer in silence, they hide it, they smile in public, then lie awake at 2 a.m. wondering how they're going to make it through the next month. Many don't ask for help until it's way too late. Some never ask at all. That's the silent part. That's the killer part. The pressure to keep up. Let's not ignore the cultural side of this either. Australia has a strange relationship with image. There's this unspoken pressure to look like you're doing well, even if behind the scenes, you're barely keeping it together. We've all seen it. The nice car in the driveway, the kitchen renovation, the overseas holiday, the latest iPhone or smartwatch. And on the surface, it looks like success. But often, it's debt. It's afterpay. It's credit cards and personal loans just to keep up appearances. Social media makes it worse. We're constantly seeing curated snapshots of other people's lives, their best bits, the filtered wins, the celebrations, the purchases. And even if we know it's not the full story, it still gets to us. It still makes us feel like we're behind, like we're not doing enough. So we spend, even if we can't afford to. And it's not always about greed. It's not about being shallow. Sometimes it's about wanting to fit in. Sometimes it's about giving your kids a better life than you had. Sometimes it's about one small thing that brings a bit of joy when everything else feels heavy. But there's a cost. Every swipe, every payment plan, every treat that gets put on credit, it all adds up. And over time, that cost becomes suffocating, quietly, slowly, completely. Young Australians are drowning first. If you're in your 20s or 30s, chances are you're already feeling the weight. The student loan, the rising rent, the car repayments, maybe even a mortgage that's eating half your income. You're expected to build a future, save for retirement, stay fit, eat organic, invest, travel, have a social life, and somehow do it all without going broke. But let's be real, it's not working. Younger Australians are carrying a disproportionate amount of debt, and they're doing it on lower real wages than their parents had at the same age. The cost of living has surged, but incomes, not so much. Home ownership, the traditional Aussie dream, now feels like a fantasy for many. Even those who've managed to scrape together a deposit are often financially maxed out, living repayment to repayment with zero breathing room. One unexpected bill, and everything unravels. Then there's job security, or the lack of it. The workforce today is full of casual, part-time, and contract roles. Benefits are patchy, hours are unpredictable, and promotions, rare. Add to that rising HEX-help debts, and it's easy to see why so many young people feel like they're stuck on a treadmill, running hard but going nowhere. It's not laziness, it's not bad budgeting. It's a broken system, and for a whole generation it's starting to feel hopeless. No cushion, no safety net. One of the scariest parts of Australia's growing debt crisis is just how many people are living without any kind of financial safety net. A recent study found that nearly half of Australians wouldn't be able to cover a $500 emergency without either borrowing money or cutting back on essentials like food, medicine, or bills. Think about that. One unexpected expense, just one, and everything starts to unravel. Life happens, cars break down, kids get sick, rent goes up, jobs disappear. These aren't rare freak events. They're part of normal life. But when you've got no savings, no buffer, no room to move, there's nowhere to turn when things go wrong. So what happens? People borrow more. They lean harder on credit cards. They dip into buy now, pay later. They take out personal loans they can't really afford, and the cycle deepens. Debt grows, stress increases, and for some, it can tip into something even more serious like eviction, repossession, or homelessness. It's a vicious cycle. Once you're in it, it's incredibly hard to escape. And it's not just individuals who suffer. This financial fragility ripples through families, workplaces, and entire communities. What's worse? It's becoming the norm. Living one emergency away from disaster is now the reality for millions of Australians. And that's deeply alarming. So who's to blame? It's easy to blame individuals. You shouldn't have spent so much. You should have budgeted better. Why did you take out that loan? That kind of thinking is everywhere. But honestly, it's a shallow way to look at a much bigger, much more complex problem. Sure, personal responsibility matters. And yes, financial literacy is important. But let's not pretend that budgeting skills alone can fix an economic system that's pushing people to their limits, and then punishing them when they can't keep up. Because here's the truth. The system profits off people being in debt. Banks make billions from interest charges, late fees, and overdrafts. Credit card companies and lenders market aggressively, everywhere from your email inbox to your Instagram feed. They sell the dream of flexibility and freedom while burying the real costs in fine print. And what about the government? It's been slow to step in, slow to regulate, slow to update policies that were designed for a very different economy. Meanwhile, the entire system runs on the assumption that we'll keep spending, that we'll borrow to spend more, that we'll stay in debt, because that's what keeps the engine running, for them. So no, this isn't just about bad luck or bad decisions. It's about bad design, and it's ordinary people who are paying the price. The quiet desperation. What makes this a silent killer is that most people don't talk about it. Debt isn't like a broken leg. You don't post it on Instagram. You don't casually mention it at dinner. It's invisible, but it's everywhere. People go to work every day, smile at their colleagues, pay their bills, but inside, they're panicking. They're trying to juggle payments. They're taking on side gigs. They're losing sleep, and no one sees it until something breaks. A relationship, a job, a nervous system. That's when the damage becomes visible, but by then, it's often too late. What can we do? Look, I'm not going to end this by pretending there's some magical solution. This isn't a just cancel your Netflix subscription problem. It's way bigger than that. But here's what we can do. First, we have to talk about it. Normalize the conversation around debt. It's affecting too many people to stay silent. Second, we need to demand better policies. Things like affordable housing, proper regulation of predatory lenders, real action on wage growth, and better safety nets. Third, we need to educate ourselves and each other, not in a preachy way, but in a real, honest way. Understand how credit works, understand what happens when you miss a payment. Learn how to build a basic emergency fund, even if it's just $10 a week. And finally, we need to support one another. No judgment, no shame. Because if we keep pretending everything's fine, more and more people are going to keep suffering quietly. The bottom line, debt is not just a number on a spreadsheet. It's not just interest rates and repayments. It's the quiet panic in the middle of the night. It's the canceled plans, the mounting pressure, the long hours, and the empty fridge. It's a silent killer. And if we're not careful, it's going to rob us of more than just money. It's going to rob us of our peace, our relationships, our futures. So if you're struggling right now, know this. It's not your fault. And there is a way through. But it starts with honesty, with community, and with a system that puts people first, not profit. Thank you for watching. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Stay informed.